Steve here from the depot, bringing you another how-to video on things you can do in Run 8 to make the sim more realistic. Today's topic will be setting up a DPU, also known as a distributed power unit, and then how to start a train on a heavy grade with the DPU. We're here in Barstow. We got a fairly big train. We're going to go through the steps of how to set the DPU up, make sure you got it set up right, it's oriented the right way, and it responds to your commands from inside the cab. Then we'll jump over to Mojave, put it on a grade, and we'll get it started and go through all the steps to safely get a train started. This has kind of been asked about, and one of the things I see is guys who get heavy trains on Mojave and they don't quite understand how the DPUs work, how to get the train started, without breaking it in half. You don't just have to put everything to 8 and start it. So we'll show you a nice, gentle, easy way to get a train started within safe train handling procedures. So let's go ahead and get started and set our DPUs up. Okay, now we're in the cab of the ES44, and we're going to do it just from this unit. The process is the same with an SD70 ACE. So right here on the screen starting, we have our distributed power screen. When I'm running with a DPU, I always leave this screen up on one of my MFDs. So I always want to know what the DPU is doing back there, how many amps it's drawing, is it sanding, things like that. So we'll leave this screen up to start with. As you can see, it says lead. This is our lead unit right now. So if we did something here on the head end, just notch one because there's no amps. Let me throw the reverser forward. You get some amps. So just so it'll mimic whatever the head end's doing. So we don't have our DPU set up yet. You won't see that on there. Every DPU set, whether you have a mid train or a rear end. So in this case, we just have a rear end DPU. When we set that up, it will appear here in the B column. If you had a mid train and a rear end DPU, your mid train would appear in the B column, and your rear end would appear here in the C column. And you can see you have your settings here, as you saw me put the throttle in idle. So it displays the throttle settings 1 through 8, or dynamic, depending on how you do it. Your load, how many amps you're drawing, the brake pipe pressure, the brake cylinder pressure, and the main reservoir pressure of the unit. So you get a little bit of information about what the DPU is doing back there, and so you know what your rear end's doing and what you're doing up here, so you can make adjustments accordingly. So let's go ahead, we'll jump to the back, and we'll set the DPU up, and then we'll run a few self-tests to make sure the DPU is set up properly and moving the right direction properly. Okay, we are at the rear of our train now, and I have two ES44s on the rear back here for the DPUs. Now, you can do this either way you want, depending on how you go about this. But the first thing we'll do is click one of the units. I like to use the unit against the train. That's just what I like to do, because that way I know in the DPU list that's the engine up against the train. So if it's set for orientation forward or orientation backward, whatever it is against the train, I have a reference point for what it is. So go ahead and click that unit. It'll bring up your real unit options window. And then there's a little box here for the DPU setup. So we're going to go ahead and take it from slave mode to DPU lead. Now, this is important here. You can see right here it says DPU forward. That is wrong. The unit, you set the DPU direction for the unit, the direction the unit is facing. So as you can clearly see, this unit is long hood forward against the train, meaning it is in reverse. So you want to set this to DPU reverse. Okay. This unit is also MU'd to the UP unit next to it. That means that whatever this unit will receive the signal from the head end, and then the trailing units in the consist at the rear will respond to whatever happens. So this unit should a good double check to do too is to click this unit and make sure it is set up as a slave. You don't want two lead units set up. You need one as a lead and one or more as slaves. So it's running, it's in slave mode. Its orientation is not important because it's a slave. As long as this unit here is showing in lead and the direction of the unit is in relation to the train is set correctly, as in it is in reverse, it is good to go. So, this is a basic setup here of how this all needs to be oriented to get this moving properly. Because if you put this in forward and don't check that and it stays in forward and you go to try to notch up, this unit is going to go, we're facing westbound now. The lead unit is going to go west and pull on the train. This unit here in the rear of the train is going to go east, and it's going to pull the train apart. Now you have more horsepower on the head end, so it'll probably start moving it that way, but you're not going to get very far, and you're going to be dragging this train everywhere. And eventually, because you're going to start ramping up the amps and going for more notches, you're going to bust this train in two. So then you're going to have to stop and start all over again, and make sure, figure out what you did wrong and everything like that. So it's important to make sure, like I said, that this is oriented with the direction of the train. That might be the biggest thing. Even more so than making sure it's set up in lead, because like I said, if you got the wrong way, you could break the train in two, maybe corrupt your train, cause a server issue if you're on a server. So make sure that is set correctly. So now we will go, we'll set this up here, and we'll go through some self-tests that you can do to make sure that your DPU is responding properly to the commands from the head end. Okay, we are back on the head end now. And a little disclaimer here. In my professional railroading career, I have never dealt with DPUs before. So I am not totally familiar on the process, the proper rule procedure for setting up a DPU and testing a DPU. I have a procedure that I personally go through to make sure the DPU responds to all the commands, everything that you could ask of it, to make sure that it's doing what you need it to do. So, if you work on BNSF or UP, you might be like, well, that's not right. Well, I don't know the real procedure for it. This is just a procedure I go through within the realm of Run 8 to make sure that the DPU is responding to my commands and it's doing what I want it to do. So, we're going to leave the train in full service here, because I don't want the train going anywhere. We'll work off the independent brake, because I've taken the handbrakes off and everything. So one of the first things I like to do, I just see if the DPU will respond to a normal non-fence command, and I'll go over the fence here in a minute. So we'll put the reverser in. First we'll just make sure there's a notch. Okay, it notches up. We'll go to forward. Does it amp? Yes, it's drawing amp. So without the fence set up, it is responding to the commands that I have asked of it. So you get that. So if it's going to do that, it's going to go into dynamic, I believe. See, there goes the setup. So if you need dynamic, it'll go to dynamic. Does it do sand? Can't remember if it'll show it sanding. Yeah, there you go, right there. It shows sand. So now your DPU is now sanding with your command. The DPU will also auto sand. If it starts to build too many amps on the rear, it'll try to sand and keep it up to prevent a wheel slip and issues like that occurring. So you can see it's sanding, so that's working fine. Now, we will set up a fence. And find the command on my rail driver here. DPU fence up. This green line is your fence. Now what happens in the fence is this cuts the unit off from across the board, like a blanket command system. When the fence is up, the DPU will now independently respond to commands that you set to it through the game, whether it be your keyboard commands that you have set up, which is going to be something you want to get familiar with, learning your DPU commands through the keyboard, and your rail driver. It was one thing I did. I reprogrammed my bottom row keys on my rail driver for DPU fence up, fence down, DPU throttle up, and DPU throttle down, so that I could independently command the DPUs based on what I need, and I'll show you this when we start the train up on Mojave. So I'm going to drop the fence for a second because I want to get the DPU in, because I want to draw amps back there. So we're just in forward right now, and the fence is up. Now, with the fence up, like I said, now if I do something here, the DPU does not respond to it. So if you don't want the DPU come, like say you're pulling in the yard and you just want control over the head end and you don't want the DPU pushing you or whatever, especially if you got to go for air quickly or something like that, you know, now that they're idle, they're not doing anything, they're just along for the ride back there. So knock it down, and here's what I like to do. We'll test this and make sure that it's receiving a command from the head end. So I will hit the DPU throttle up key. Now the DPU independently throttles up from the head end and loads. So now you can see that it's also receiving a command independently from the head end. Another thing you can do too, just to make sure, let's see, give it maybe another notch there, make sure it goes up over 1. So you're getting good amps there. Then we'll drop down. So, so you can see it's all working as intended. Another thing you can do real quick, drop it back to neutral. That's where I have the arrow on, but forgot about that. But you can see the brake cylinder did respawn there when I released the independent. So this is all working as intended up here. Now we'll go back to the rear end and do a quick visual test just to make sure you can see that everything is working properly. Okay, we are back on the rear end now. I have bailed off the engine brakes up here, so now there is no air in the cylinder. It'll only respond to an actual movement of this independent handle. Got the reverser and forward here, so now we can do a movement test, like a bunch test. I saw someone in the forum mentioned that this is what they do. They do a bunch test to make sure that the engines are responding and actually bringing the slack. And so, reverser forward, DPU throttle up, let them load some amps. Alright, they've bunched the train. Go ahead and throttle off. Now the slack's going to roll back out because of the grade right here at Barstow. So, but you could also take this, drop it to reverse, and see if it'll stretch it a little bit. And it does. So, there you go. So now you got your slack bunched and stretched, and the DPU is responding to the commands that you want. You got your orientation set right. It's done everything you've asked of it. You've established communication with your DPU. The DPU also has an internal EOT built into the coupler, for those of you who don't know that. So if you go in and hit the built-in EOT options, the engine itself will act as the marker. So there won't be a physical EOT, but you can still see what the rear end is doing. And another thing too, when you set your DPU up, make sure you have your headlight switch set to dim. The rear end headlight will respond, because this unit should be set up accordingly, so it should be set for short hood trail. But it'll respond to the headlight command, so make sure you leave it on dim. And that's pretty much it. You got everything all set up, everything you need to do to get her set up for travel. So now we'll take us up on Mojave, up on the grade. This is a pretty big, heavy train, so we'll take it up on Mojave, and we'll try to get it started and show you just how you want to go about doing that. Okay, we are here at Bealville in the siding. This is the exact same train we just played with down at Barstow. So we're going to assume the scenario is that this train was set here for a recrew, cabbed up, got in it, got on it. It's in full service, 65 pounds, as you can see here on the reservoir. We got 65 pounds, it's in full service. DPU's properly set up, it's ready to go. We just need to hop on and go. We got our permission from the dispatcher. Go ahead and line our route and get a signal. Get a better signal. Just for fun. Okay. Now, it's really simple to actually get these trains out of here. Some people like to think that this is going to be, it's a big ordeal. You know, it's tough to get these out of here. You're going to break into. You just have to follow a common sense way of looking at things. You know, some guys will say, well, I'll just throw them in 8 and go. Well, you could do that, I guess, but that's not really the best way to go about it. You just want to be gentle, and you want to bring things up at one step at a time. The first thing I'll do and bring these out of here. And this is also a similar situation to what we do when we're going up the Pittsburgh line. We stop for helpers at Johnstown. We pull east of Conemaugh, stop, the helper ties on, they do an air test, and we pull. And normally what happens is, you know, when they get a good air test, the engineer will say, okay, on the release, okay, to shove me out. And he'll release the automatic, and when the helper starts to get the release on the rear, he'll come up against you. He'll say, I'm leaning, hey, we're up against you, you know, and the engineer will say, okay, here we go. And the helper will come up first and bunch the train up and come up against us, and then you start pulling it out from the head and everything moves out in one nice piece. That's what we're going to replicate here. I have done this many times with these DPU trains, and I've never had a problem with it unless the train is, you know, is just straight up too big, too heavy, too underpowered, you know, but a normal train should come out of here like this. So we'll follow it the right way. So first of all, we're just going to go right ahead and we'll put our fence up. That would be the first thing, so that way we're not behind on the 8-ball here. We'll go ahead and reverse or forward. Everything is now ready to go. As soon as we give it a notch, they'll start getting amps. There won't be any delay. What I like to do, actually, I will take the DPU right off the bat and go right to 2. See the amps building down here? We'll get a, you know, for all intents and purposes, this is just, you know, part of a demonstration. You don't want to leave an engine in 2 for too long, you know, building amps like that and not moving, but, you know, build your amps on the rear so when you release, yeah, everything will be ready to go. Get yourself a notch up here on the head end. Alright, you got amps on the head end, amps on the rear, so now here comes the release. The rear will pretty much release automatically. At least it'll detect the airflow automatically because the DPU acts as, you know, a source of train charging, as in the DPU can help charge the air, which is a feature of distributed power units, which can't be done with a conventional helper unit. But anyway, we'll wait for our flow to come down to about 60 psi. And then we'll pull on it here. Okay, we had a minor technical issue when I tried to start it, so I got it set up back the way it was before. Same train, it's a different leader, don't worry about it. We're going to now bring the train out of here. I got the air down, under 60 psi on the flow gauge. I get it all back up to where it was. We got 1 notch on the head end, 2 on the leader. So we're going to go ahead and start trying to bring this out of here. Now, with your amps built and everything and your air's released, I'm just going to go ahead and slowly bring out the independent. And I have a feeling it's still going to roll backward. We probably don't have enough. See, she's already moving backward. So if that happens, give your DPU, kick your DPU up 1, get yourself 1 on the head end. Little sand, never hurts. Slowly bring the independent out. See, now you can release the independent further without it falling back. Those amps are holding it in place. And eventually, ultimately what it comes down to is you're going to produce enough amps to overcome the weight of the train on the gravity of the hill. So now we're in 3 on the head end, 4 on the rear. Little horn and bell for the start, and we're almost released. Almost. Alright, that's a full independent release. Go to 4 on the head end, 5 on the rear. And I'm doing it this way because I like to keep the DPU 1 step ahead of the head end. That keeps the rear end will be bunched more than the head end is pulling out, so this will stop you from getting a knuckle. Well, she's still having a time of it. Oh, here we go. 5 on the head end, 6 on the rear. There she comes. See, the EOT movement just popped up there, and unlike real-world EOTs, these are actually quite reliable in their movement. really start to dig in here now. We'll just kind of let it go for a few minutes. As you can see before, like we covered with the testing the DPU, the DPU MFD down there, you can see the sanders are working on the rear, and it's drawing more amps. We'll go ahead and bring this to 6. Bring the DPU up to... Oh! There you go. Look at that. Too much, too fast. Too much, too fast. That's exactly what happened. That was a perfect example. That's funny. That's funny. So, right there, that's exactly what can happen. I did too much too fast, and I broke it in 2. So, I'm not ashamed of it. I'm actually glad you got to see that, because you could clearly tell when I went to bring that head end up to the next notch, it blew it in 2. So let's we'll go ahead and through the magic of editing, I'll reset it, and we'll try it again. Okay, attempt number 2 after breaking it in 2. So, like I said, I'm not ashamed of that. That's actually really good. It was a really good teaching method there. I went 1 too hard on the head end, and it blew in 2. So we've reset again. Flows down. Got the head end in 1, DPU in 2. So we'll go ahead and start bringing on that release. Whoop, that was too much too fast. Slowly let it all settle down. See, it's going to be too much. So head end, DPU will get 1. Head end got another one. DPU gets another notch. Full independent release. Give it 1 more. Now this time, we'll just slowly let it come up this way. I think I just gave a little too much too hard. And when I went for that notch for the head end, it did not like it. And when I went outside to delete it, to restart it, broke back like 2 or 3 cars from the head end. So I gave it a little too much on the head end, I think. She's coming. We'll give the DPU another one there. If you just noticed there, it just a split second. The DPU said slip under the load, and then it went for sand. The DPU is now automatically sanding. So I'll go ahead and give the head end another notch here. Actually, let's see here. Bring us up. You can see your coupler force up here. So 300 is kind of high. Bring the DPU up another one there, kind of little oomph against us there, and keep the force. See, when we brought the DPU up, the force has come down, keeping everything bunched. Just work our way toward 8, that's all. We'll go ahead and give the head end a notch here. See the force is rising. Bring up the train graph so you can actually see what's really going on. go ahead and give the DPU a notch. Watch your E's up here. Watch this slack in here. Here comes the notch for the DPU. It should darken a little bit. Another thing too is that, I mean, play around with it a little bit. If it looks like, go back to the coupler force thing, which it's kind of leveling out, but if it looks like you're going to start drawing up a lot of your coupler force is going to get too bad, you're drawing too many amps, just back it down. You don't have to come up the hill in notch 8. I mean, if this is 13 mile an hour, it's not terrible. I've come up here slower than this for sure, but I mean, let's try to get it to 8 at least and see what we can do. So we'll bring the DPU to 8. I'll line myself up a little further here just in case. Just in case it takes too long. Bring the head end out to 7. But you see the coupler forces are starting to come down too as the DPU comes up. So DPU's in 8 and we're in 8, or we're in 7 up here, excuse me. See the coupler forces are kind of bouncing near 300. Another thing too is to watch this up here. You know, if this thing gets like dark red almost to the black, I believe when the update come out it said call Kenny Loggins because you're in the danger zone. So you know it's getting bad. The redder this gets, you know it's getting bad. So keep an eye on that. I mean, you can't do it in the real world, but I mean, like I said, you're here in the sim. You got a tool, you might as well use it. Alright, let's go and just bring the head end to 8. Now normally when I bring the head end to 8 like this going up the hill, I just drop the fence. We're about 320, a little over 300. It's kind of stabilizing a little bit, so it's not overkill. Yeah, you still got a little orange up here on the first car, between the head end and the first car. That's where most of your force is going to be. But there we go. She's steadying up now. So you'll trundle up the hill here, 17 mile an hour. Not too bad. The amps are pretty good too. 1100, almost 1200 amps. That's not terrible. Could be way worse than that. But yeah, that's more the in and out of bringing the train up the hill with the DPU from a dead stop. It's just it's one thing I always hear guys saying, oh, I broke my train in half, or this train's too big, and you know, it could be sometimes. Sometimes the trains aren't built right. Sometimes they're underpowered. It's just what it comes to the territory, you know. But if you get a train that's right and you're having trouble with it, you might be like you saw me do it. You might be giving too much too fast. Bringing a train out from a dead stop like this, especially on a grade like Mojave, is, you know, if you're not gentle with it and you're not, you know, you don't respect the hill and respect how big the train is, you're gonna break into. So it's just a little nice little course on getting a train started uphill with a DPU. Get out of this tunnel here. We'll be just about finished once we get out of the tunnel here. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Keep an eye out for more videos. We got a couple good ones regarding humps and RCO units coming out soon. Me and MJV, Mark Voigt, like I said, we're going to be working on some of those. So we got some good stuff coming up here soon. So hope you enjoyed this one, found it interesting, and learned a little something. So take care and have fun out there, guys.